Previously on Resident Evil.
Captain Wesker, where's Chris? Look out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of it!
You're just a slave of Umbrella.
Smart girl, but I think you misunderstand me.
Jill!
Claire Redfield. I came to find my brother, Chris.
You must be the new guy, Leon. Sorry, but it looks like your party has been canceled.
Listen, he's coming for us. We're both gonna die. You'll see.
There was a hostile local. I had no choice but to neutralize it.
Welcome to the family, son.
Hey guys, I'm Jack Lockjaw, and this is my review for Resident Evil 7. I want to start off this review by talking about my personal connection to the series. I love Resident Evil. I've been on board since the beginning, and it has to be my favorite franchise of all time. But like the horrifying mutations you fight in each installment, the series has undergone many transformations. Not all of them were great. Many gamers onboarded with Resident Evil 4, which honestly, I didn't love as much as most people. And you may be like,
But Jack, Resident Evil 4 is the best game in the whole series.
and that's a perfectly valid opinion, one that is shared by, I would guess, a great majority of players. I do like the game. It did rejuvenate the popularity of the series. It is also very clearly where the series took a sharp turn away from survival horror. I won't lie to you. When I saw the reveal for Resident Evil 7, and they showcased that it would be a first-person horror game set in the backwoods of Louisiana with a weird family living in squalor, I was super worried that the series was once again being transformed into something I found unrecognizable. I thought it might be headed towards some kind of defenseless hide-and-seek style game about a cannibalistic torture family. Hiding in closets, eating eyeballs, and losing fingers just didn't feel like where I wanted the series to go. Aside from the demo and the initial trailer, I spent most of my time vigorously trying to avoid teasers, gameplay videos, and articles about the game. I wanted to go into it as fresh as I could, with nothing but my love for Resident Evil and my own personal hopes and baggage to form my opinions. I'm going to talk about this game by defining what I think constitutes a Resident Evil game, and if this newest entry captured that feeling for me. And during this, I hope it helps you to understand what I usually answer in my reviews, not whether or not it's good, but understanding who would enjoy it and if that person is you. A fair warning, I do my best not to show anything that is a spoiler, and if there is any footage from later in the game, I show it without context.
Now that would be telling, Ethan. And I don't do spoilers.
One thing I've always felt is that a Resident Evil style horror game is actually a lot like a Metroidvania game. For people that are not familiar with the term Metroidvania, it refers to a style of game that is usually a 2D platformer, where you have the freedom to explore a large interconnected map. Areas are usually blocked off until you progress by acquiring special abilities that remove or circumvent obstructions. Resident Evil games are a lot like this. You don't necessarily gain new character abilities, but you do acquire keys and puzzle pieces that let you unfold the maps room by room. You find yourself at shortcuts and locked doors that bring you into areas you had no idea were connected. I was surprised to see that Resident Evil 7 does this fairly well. There are some one-off areas that aren't connected in ways that allow for backtracking, but overall I was glad to see this return to the series. Recent entries abandon this for a linear approach with forward-moving stages to which you never return. That's not necessarily wrong. There are many games that do this well. Heck, the original director of Resident Evil and Resident Evil 4, Shinji Mikami, made his latest game, The Evil Within, like this. And that wasn't a bad game, even if The Evil Within was to horror tropes what Jackson Pollock was to paint. But making a game in the style of a Metroidvania Evania? Making a game like this rewards the player with a sense of discovery. The game is planned out completely linear, but the world is set up in a way that makes it feel like exploring rather than being on a track. As you come back to previous areas, you might find them populated by a different set of enemies, making traversal of familiar areas feel different when you return. You can't necessarily take down all of the enemies because resources are scarce, This is another element of survival horror that made its return in Resident Evil 7. Ever since Resident Evil 4, enemies have dropped items like ammunition. This makes combat easy and actually beneficial to engage the enemies. And with the amount they throw at you, you had to. In classic Resident Evil games, engaging the enemy in combat always came at a cost. Ammo and health items were limited resources only procured by scavenging. This made every room worth combing and every encounter into a cost-benefit analysis session. Can I easily get by without taking damage? How much damage does this enemy deal? Will I need to return to this room? How many bullets would it take to kill it? And how many bullets do I have? The enemies are resilient. They will soak up bullets if your shots aren't accurate. On top of the limited resources, you also have limited inventory. You had a limited inventory all the way up through Resident Evil 6 too, so it wasn't an element that was abandoned entirely, but the amount of items you can hold is really diminished, and key items do take up a slot. Which means if you want to scavenge for supplies, you can't take your whole arsenal with you. And when you use your key items, you actually have to go into your inventory and select it. If the monster is in the room with you, it can sometimes feel like the horror movie equivalent to fumbling with your keys. All of this comes together to ratchet up the tension. To me, Resident Evil has never been scary. I don't want to tell people how scary Resident Evil 7 is going to be for them. That's extremely subjective. This game does utilize the first-person point of view to enhance jump scares and ominous noises. This game did not scare me, and I'm not saying I'm immune to jump scares. The first time I played PT and Lisa grabbed me, I had a heart attack and died. To me, this series has always been about the tension. It's that feeling of dwindling resources, and knowing you have to go into a room with an enemy you can't possibly overcome. Or that feeling of panic when you went for the shot. Use the one shotgun shell that you had left to try and blow off the monster's head, and you miss. The movement and action in this game feels slow and cumbersome. Reloading and healing feels like it takes forever. Some players will find this frustrating and awful. Most games made these days leave the player totally disempowered or fully capable. Resident Evil 7 wants to give you fights you can win, but leave you hanging on by a thread. I came into this game very skeptical, but finished with a feeling that, while different, is a return to form for the series. There still aren't as many puzzles as in the earlier entries, and the enemy variety was disappointingly low. There's also a single choice in the game where it basically asks you to choose between Coke or Pepsi, and I kind of hate it when games give you a binary decision out of nowhere. I think a better way to do multiple endings is to give you side objectives that affect the plot of the game in a more natural way. Plus, while I understand the decision to omit the series regulars because they feel too powerful at this point, I really want to continue their story. Capcom, give us back Jill. Why don't you use her anymore? You put Chris in everything, and you keep giving us new people when we have a perfectly good character we're already invested in waiting on the side. Overall, I really liked this game. I prepared myself for some extreme disappointment, and came out the other side full of hope and excitement for the future of this franchise that I love. I got the sense that someone at Capcom finally understands what makes a Resident Evil game again. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, comment, and share the video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more. You can find me on Twitter under Jack Lockjaw, as well as on Twitch occasionally. You can send me email at corruptsavemail@gmail.com. I appreciate all the support that my channel has gotten. It's been a lot of fun, and a lot of work, but feedback and discussions with all of you have totally made it worth it. Thanks again and have a good one. Side note, there are a couple Easter eggs I saw on my first playthrough that I thought might not be obvious to people that haven't combed the series as much as I have. One of them is a book called The Unveiled Abyss by Clive R. O'Brien. This is a reference to Resident Evil Revelations. Clive O'Brien was the director of the BSAA in that game. The virus was called the T-Abyss virus, and there was a special edition of the game called the Unveiled Edition. The other one was a newspaper article talking about missing people. The author of the article was Alissa Ashcroft. She was the reporter character for the Resident Evil Outbreak series. I thought those were kind of neat. Please let me know if you find anything similar in the game, because I'd love to hear about it.